Hello there, welcome to today's episode where we talk about configuring users and groups. Configuring users and groups. Okay, with that said, I just wanted to show you a quick recap of what an Azure AD really is. So, what you see here is an Azure directory, and this amazing technology is able to manage devices like you see a server, a computer. It could be a laptop or a desktop, whatever it is. And these are devices owned by users and used by users or used for other important things for the business. But it also manages users like this person here and, of course, groups. So when I put a user and another user together, that's a group. It's also able to manage and administer devices. That includes in recent times, your iOS, your Android, other flavors of operating systems for mobile devices, your Active Directory can do that. Our focus today really would be creating and configuring users and groups. Okay, so come with me and let's do that together now. Before we get started, I would want us to have a look at what Azure ships when you sign up for a subscription. We learned last time that when you create your Azure account, you are given a subscription. Well, that's how you pay for the services that Azure provides. So you can see my account there. But then what are my default rights or stature in this space? So when I look at my account, the account has an object ID. Very important for us to pay attention to object IDs, okay? This is unique to me and would not be put anywhere else. This object ID is like you have an SQL database where you have your primary keys, you have your fields, you got your columns, you got the tables, yeah? So let's say this was my first name and my last name. This key must be unique to me. So let's say my first name and last name and something else. So SO221. Now somebody else is SO, but he's not 221. He could be 213. Somebody could be FD151. These are unique values pertaining to these fields. Okay, so when I'm searching the database, I could type things like select from table where PK is equals to SO221, and that would give these results for this field one. Okay, so Microsoft intelligently has also designed the AD to be exactly like that. All right, so by default, it tells me that I am a global administrator. You can see that there. We're going to go into it a bit more. And then it has given me other roles that I'm yet to find out. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's check this out. When I click on users, the only user in this subscription at the moment is me. It has my name, my email address, and it tells me I'm a member. Wow. Yes, I'm a member. Every user is a member anyway. And then when I click into the user, I can see more about my user object. The keyword again is user object. Now, my object ID, like I said from the beginning, is this unique value stored in the database. It has now my user principal name. Of course, it has my first name and last name also stored. And anything else that Azure thinks it's relevant to this user account. Okay. Now it tells me that this user has some assigned roles and some Azure role assignments. Now, you might want to know what the difference is. We will discuss this in a different video, but let's have a quick look at what it is now. When I click on assigned roles, I can automatically see that I am the global administrator. So that tells you and I that when you sign up, anyone who signs up for a subscription on Azure, so anyone who signs up for subscription on Azure automatically becomes what? A global administrator. That's the default. And the global administrator can manage all aspects of your Azure AD and all microservices that Azure AD use Azure AD identities. Yes. Say it again. So you can manage all aspects of your Azure AD and microservices that requires the use of Azure AD identities. Okay, we'll talk about this later on. Now, one thing interesting here is it says that this gentleman here, Samuel here, he's a global administrator. That's my role. And on something called a resource or a scope on this resource name called directory. Why? Because the Azure AD is a resource called a directory. Yeah. Okay. And I have been given this role as a GA, which means global admin. And I have the right to do what? Manage all aspects of the Azure AD, everything to do with creating users, creating apps, service principals, deleting users, creating groups, creating security groups, everything I can do here, SSO, MFA, whatever I can do on the Azure AD, even including adding machines, enrolling devices. I have the global administrator right to do so. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what this directory is. When I click the directory, what does it take me? And like I said, it takes you to the Azure Active Directory. You see that there? That is it, Azure Directory. Okay, so that's role that I have helps me to do anything I want to do with, even mobility, MDM. I can do AD Connect. I can do cross-tenant synchronization. All these features, I can do stuff with it because I've got the GA, Global Admin role. Okay. And then it has another role. It's important for us to understand this before we even go ahead and create new users. So there are two important roles. We got the role of assigned role, which is the role that applies to Azure AD. Remember that that's role, assigned roles would always be roles applied to Azure AD. But then we have Azure role assignments. What's the difference here? Okay. Now, unable to retrieve role assignments for it because there's no role assignment yet. Let me go to subscription and I'll show you something. When I go to subscription and I click on the subscription, which is this one here, its subscription ID is that. When I go into access control and I go and look at roles, you see that the subscription has different roles. Now, let's look at the difference here. The first one gave you roles pertaining to the directory. So the first one was the role on the DIR. This one is also a role, but on Azure itself. So if I were to draw this, I'm going to draw this so it's clearer for you because most people don't teach these things, but I want to make it as simple as possible for all of us to understand. Let me get my whiteboard. In fact, the command prompt will do. So when I bring this blackboard, when I bring this blackboard and I start to sketch, I want you to understand something. Oh, let's get my pen tool. All right. So this is your Azure itself. Okay. And I want to put your Azure Active Directory here as in, let me just sketch it like that. One, two, bring this down, one and two. That's Azure AD. And then let me sketch something else. Let's put your on-premises or data center down here. So that's your on-premises, yeah. So I'll say on-premises. This is your Azure tenancy, or let's say your Azure subscription. And of course, the white elephant here is Azure AD. So that's Azure Active Directory. But then there's an important person here. Let me make him this color. Is this object? Okay. Now, you cannot have an Azure subscription without an Azure Active Directory because that is the feature that Microsoft requires you to have in order to even handle things on your subscription. So when you sign up for a subscription, Microsoft puts your name in here. So mine is Colette. So let's say yours is Philippe Gonzalez, FG, is stored in here. And because I sign up for subscription, automatically I'm made the global admin. That is global admin to administer anything on this Azure AD. But because this role I have really pertains to what I do in Azure, I'm also given a different right. So I've got a GA here, but also on here, treat this Azure entity also as a resource. So this one is also a scope. Okay, it's a subscription right, but it's a scope. And in this scope, I've also been given the permission there to say I am the owner. Why am I the owner? Well, I purchased a subscription and I'm the first user object created in a directory. I am the global admin from the beginning and I am the owner as well on the subscription. Later on, of course, I would be able to sync this Azure Active Directory to my on-premises using something called AD Connect. And what that does is it would now take users who are on the server here, which is normally called a Active Directory. It will take these user objects and will sync them and create cloud versions of them. So the users which are ones on a directory or a server on premises will now have a cloud presence, and they would come and from the beginning they would just be normal members of Azure AD, but they will not have any role-based access control over any scope yet in this Azure entity. We will need to specify that at some point for them. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of that. Now we're going to go ahead and create our first user. Now I wonder what name we should call our first user. So to do this, let's go to our Azure portal. Azure portal is here. Let me take a screenshot of this. And then let's go ahead and do the works now. Okay, so let's clear the screen and create our first user account. To do that, users are created in the Azure Active Directory. So what I'll do immediately will be to head over there. Like we learned the last time, you can pin your favorite resources down here and they become like hyperlinks to the main thing. So I'm going to go into here, click into it. It would open its first pane, and then I can open into other blades to do the works I want to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Click here, Azure Active Directory, and I've been given this pane here with all the features available to me for administering Azure Active Directory. Okay, what I want to do now is create a user. So to create a user, you click users, and if you don't know what to do, sometimes look at what's been done already. So what I need to do now is click on new user, create a new user, create a new user. Okay. Now there are types of users. Okay, and I'm going to have to explain that in detail. But there are three types of users. Okay. Let's just go ahead and create a user and I'll show you the different types. All right. So what name are we going to call this user? Let's write the name of this user. Let's say the name is a lady and her name is Ruby dot Smithfield. So Ruby Smithfield is the user principal name. Okay. And the nickname, of course, for males, if you integrate or link this with 365, which is your email system, you can use a Ruby Smithfield to be that user principal name. Display name is full name Ruby Smithfield. That's what you see when you have chats in Teams or when they send emails to you, Ruby Smithfield. Now I can generate a password myself or auto-generate one. For the sake of this tutorial, I don't care. Auto-generate a password. And I can enable the account right away or block this account from signing in until I allow them access into Azure portal. So at the moment, account is enabled. They will not sign in. I just need to go ahead and create the account. Now here comes important parts. The first name of this user is Ruby. Last name is Smithfield. And the user is just a member. Okay. I'm not going to worry about job title or anything else. Normally, someone at the onboarding would go ahead and put that information in here. Then it comes into assignments. What assignments are these? Can I add this user to a group? Is there a group already? There isn't one, so adding head to a group won't help. Can I add an administrative unit? There isn't one yet. I can add one. Can I add a role? Let's look at the role. When we look at the role, it says, what can this user do on the Azure AD itself? Okay, maybe this user is going to be a help desk person. Let me see if I find out something here. Help desk. Oh, this user can reset passwords for non-administrators. I like that. So that user becomes a help desk person now. And we go ahead and review our account creation. We get a validation that is good to go, and we do create. In a second, that user account has been created. So I can click there or just refresh all users, and I should see it here in a moment. Sometimes it takes a little moment. Sometimes it's good to just go back, go to users, and then you see it show up in there. Still taking time. Go over here and click on the user. You should get ready for this. The account is really there, but sometimes that view doesn't automatically refresh. So here we go. Go back to Azure AD Directory, go to users, and I should see her there now. There it is. Ruby Smithfield has been created, and she is a help desk person and is able to reset passwords. Okay, that's just a role. That role pertains to what Ruby can do on Azure Active Directory. Okay, well, later on, when we get to build our first virtual machine, we will create a user account and give this user permissions or rights for what they can do on the virtual machine. For example, we can tell them you're only allowed to turn the virtual machine on or off. Okay, so we work on that. But those are called the Azure role definitions. And what we have here is just Azure AD roles. Okay, so you get a distinction all right. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is create a group. To create groups, head again back to Azure AD, click on groups, and then you find out, okay, there was a group I created some time back called ECM auditors. We don't need it anymore. I can get rid of it, but your focus must not be on that now. Let me actually see if I can get rid of it. Delete that group. Okay. Refresh, refresh, refresh. It takes a while for this to refresh. Okay, I'll not bother about it. Deleted groups, all groups. Okay, let's create a new group. Now, there are two types of groups. We got the M365, which is for everything to do on 365. Let me explain this over here. It helps, guys. So, Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is a SaaS solution from Microsoft. So you have this mail system that is made for you. So the undergirding, the service that runs the mail system is not maintained by yourself. It's all done by Microsoft for you. So you pay Microsoft some money, and Microsoft says now you can use this mail system for yourself. Okay. Now there are permissions that you can assign to a certain group just for the mail system. Maybe that group, when you create that group, when an email is sent to, let's say, HR at mycompany.com, that email sent to HR at mycompany.com distributed to about, let's say, 4 user accounts. So user 1, 2, 3, and 4 would also get the exact same email. And if this person's not there, that person can reply. If this person's not there, that person can reply. And there's always going to be somebody there who gets to see that email. And there's visibility and accountability, and yet there's somebody who can proactively work on it. Okay, so you can create those sort of groups here. But this security group is security. You put these, you create a group name and description and assign members to that group. And those members will have every right that group, let's say there's a group, and it has a right to delete this VM or start this VM. Anyone in that group would also inherit that right to turn the VM on or off. You get a point? Okay, so groups are very powerful, and there is no point in creating one object or a resource and assigning users directly to it. And at the point you have so many of them, you can't even manage it. So the best thing to do is create a group, put those users who are allowed access into that group. If they leave the company, just onboard them, remove them. They're no longer in the group, and they no longer have access to the VM or the resource. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a group. Let me try and see if I can zoom in a little bit. So the name of the group is called Virtual machine help desk. Group members can turn VMs on or off. Okay, you have no control over this. Okay, so now we got this group ready. It's asking you, do you want to add members? I'll say not yet. I just want to create a group. Create a group. The group is created, and like I said, it's going to show in here in a moment. It does that sometimes with the portal. But the group is created. It's called virtual machine help desk. Okay, so let's go back to groups again. Click on groups, and I should see it there shortly. There it is. We have this group. Remember, the group has an object ID. The group has an object ID. The group type is a security group type. It's assigned, but there's no members in it yet. So let's just delve a bit more into the group. Let's clear the screen, click into the group, and I can look at members. There are no owners. There are no roles assigned to this group yet. It's not part of any administrative unit. The group is not a member of anything. And it's not assigned any role on any resource created on Azure itself. So it's a plain old group, okay? And that's just a group. Now we can go ahead and add people to this group. Yeah, we can go ahead and add people to this group. We do have somebody already, and that person happens to be able to do password resets. We also want this person to have a basic role of turning machines on or off. Okay, so let's actually do that. Let's go to members, and we can actually add a user by clicking on add members. Now, when I come in here, I can add users or other things, but I want to focus on users. And the only person to add is Ruby. Click on select. Now, when I refresh this, let's go to overview again. As you know, it takes a little while. But when I go to members now and refresh, it's done. It is done, but Microsoft Azure sometimes can be quite slow. Go back into the group. Okay, so we've created our security group. We've called the virtual machine help desk, and the intent of the group, you can see it here, almost like a subtitle. It says group members can turn VMs on or off. Now, in the next episodes, when we start building resources like virtual machines, we'll come and assign this group a specific access, role-based access control on the virtual machine resource to allow the users in this group only the ability to turn on or off the VMs. Okay. Now the next thing is, how do we create many users at once? Now you can do the same for groups as well, but you can do something called bulk operations. And bulk operations, you can do bulk create. All right, so we intend to create a number of users. Now, if I gave you a task to create user 1 and 2 and 3, it might be easier to just come here and click on new user and follow along like we did earlier. What if there's 100 users to create? So what Microsoft they've done is they've given us the opportunity to do bulk operations. So we can do a bulk creation, okay? And the bulk creation, you download this CSV file and then you fill it up. When you finish, you upload it here. Okay, I'll give a pen tool in a second. So you download, it's there, and now I'm going to open it. Now that I've opened it, I can create users. So let's think of names. So let's use somebody like Jackie Chan, Michael Bublé. Don't know if it's Bubble or Bublé. I don't know. Um, Will, Will Scotty, Jemima Mensa, Kasiaboa. So now I'm going to use Jackie.chan at the user principal name. Okay. Now, what is mine? When I go here and click on Samuel, my user principal name is Samuel da da da. When you look at Ruby, is Ruby Smithfield at blah blah blah. I'm just gonna go ahead and just put Ruby.Smithfield. I'm just hoping that it will add this one to it. But if not, I need to specify it. So I'll have to specify it. We'll just put it here. I'll intentionally miss one to see where we get. Okay. And I'm gonna create Will or Scotty. I'm gonna go create Jemima.Mensa. And that. Now this one, I'm gonna just leave it as that and see what it gets. If it complains about it, okay. Now the password, I'm gonna just use this initial password, and I don't want it to be blocked from the onset. Um, let's perhaps say we block Jemima and see what we get. Okay, so now you save. I've saved it now. Um, Sometimes you do have a facility to invite an external user, a contractor who needs to do a certain job for you. You can actually use their email address and say, for example, contractor at externalcompany.com, if that was the email address. External contractor. Then put a message in and say, I'm inviting you to fix our service. They'll get an email, and then into the email address, they'll get an email, and then they will now come back here and do the work. You can give them access to a certain VM, a certain resource for them to perform a certain task. So that's what you do for external contractors, okay? But before we go away, let's touch on these topics. The first one here is called a cloud identity. Cloud identity. Any user account in the Azure AD is known as a cloud identity. It's defined only in the Azure AD, okay? This includes admin accounts, administrator accounts, users who manage part of the organization. It can be used for accounts defined in the Azure organization, and also for accounts defined in an external Azure AD instance. So we can have an account here who's also defined in an external Azure AD instance as well. So it can be here and also there. So this user can be here. Okay, but that's a cloud identity. Directory synchronized. Directory synchronized user accounts, they are a directory synchronized identity defined on premises. So you do have a server on premises running Active Directory AD. That user object there is normally called a directory synchronized. Why it's synchronized? Because you will use Azure AD Connect, Azure AD Connect you install on the server, and you will sync these objects into the Azure Active Directory, and that will create an object to represent the same one on premises. So this person can authenticate against this to log into your infrastructure, or authenticate against that to log into infrastructure. So either way, if this is down, doesn't matter. You can still go through this path, okay? And the guest user, they're defined outside your Azure infrastructure network. So if you have a cloud provider, support team who needs to help you, you can invite them. Okay, if you have your own personal account like Xbox Live and Hotmail and anything else, even Gmail, you can invite them. Then external contractors can also come into your infrastructure and do work for you. All right. So this is how users groups are created on Azure AD. Thanks for your time, and sorry that we had some struggles along the way, but it's to help you understand this. See you on the next one. Bye bye.